So Kamala Harris is, of course, not the official nominee yet. I'd say her chances are about 99.9% at this point, only because it's clear that the same forces who push Biden out have selected her, and they're the ones who decide. Doesn't matter what the voters want. And as mentioned in the opening monologue, already Harris has been endorsed by dozens of national Democrat politicians. The Clintons came out and endorsed her within minutes of Biden dropping out. The donors are apparently all in. She's raised like $50 million since the Biden announcement. The media claims that those are grassroots donations, which, yeah, sure. But more importantly, as far as I know, nobody else has thrown their hat into the ring. And at this point, it would take somebody with real guts, like a true insurgent type, to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to, not so fast. I don't think anyone like that exists in the Democrat Party, at least not anybody with a high enough profile to potentially pull it off. So it looks like it'll be Harris. And if it's Harris, we all know what that means. It means that the whole campaign will be about race and gender, right? Vote for Harris or you're a racist misogynist. That's the whole campaign. And we all know that. In fact, it's already starting. I'll give you just one example of many from the past 12 hours. Reuters has this headline: with Kamala Harris, Democrats would bet against U.S. history of sexism and racism. The article says the Democratic Party will be taking a historic gamble if it now turns to Vice President Kamala Harris to become its presidential candidate. Betting that a black woman can overcome racism, sexism, and her own missteps as a politician to defeat Republican Donald Trump. In more than 2 centuries of democracy, American voters have elected only one black president and never a woman, a record that makes even some black voters wonder if Harris can crash through the hardest ceiling in U.S. politics. Will her race and gender be an issue? Absolutely, said Latasha Brown, a political strategist and co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund. But despite earning praise in the last few weeks for her strong defense of Biden, some Democrats remain concerned about Harris's shaky first 2 years in office, short-lived campaign for the 2020 Democratic nomination, and perhaps most of all, the weight of a long history of racial and gender discrimination in the United States. You see what they're doing here, which is very, very funny, that they admit that, well, yeah, she's incompetent, she's done a terrible job, but mainly it's that America is racist and sexist. Well, how? So if she ends up failing and she loses the election, like they've set it up so that they can, of course, say, oh, it's because America is racist and sexist. But couldn't it also be that people have noticed what you call her shaky time as vice president? I mean, that potential explanation exists, but we know ahead of time that if she loses the election, it won't be because of that. And then it goes on and on about America's history of racism and sexism and so on. So there are 2 things I want to say about this, and we'll obviously be revisiting this topic because there's a lot to be said about it. But for now, first of all, just to kind of reiterate a point, because I think it's important, this word of caution, that it would be very foolish to assume that Harris is not a threat to Trump, that her candidacy is a big joke, that Trump will win easily, and so on. We should not assume that. Yes, Harris is a bumbling idiot with no accomplishments to speak of, but that doesn't necessarily matter. The media, which still has an enormous amount of power to shape narratives, will set to work, as they already have, to shape this, to shape her into this messianic figure, this savior figure, a woman who has come to save us from white supremacy and sexism and all the rest of it. And that propaganda, it's hard to judge sometimes because that kind of propaganda just falls totally flat, probably for you if you're watching the show. It obviously falls flat for me. I just laugh at it. But that's not the case for everybody. There's plenty of people in this country who will see that and be convinced by it. And will be successfully energized because of it. I've heard the claim, very common claim on the right anyway, that actually a Harris campaign will be easier for Trump to beat than Biden. But I think I don't think that's correct. Now, Harris of 2024 would be easier to beat than Biden of 2020 or Biden of 2016 if he had gotten in. That's true. But Trump wasn't running against that Biden, but Trump was running against the Biden who can't speak at all. You know, we joke about how Harris can't speak, but she can't actually, what she's saying doesn't make any sense, but she can actually get the words out. So she's got that going for her at least. But I think more importantly, there was just no, like with Biden re-election, there was no energy, there was no enthusiasm. The media couldn't even find a way to generate enthusiasm, as we know, which is why they gave up on him and pushed him out instead. With Harris, by all rights, by all merits, there's nothing to be excited about. But there are certain things here that the media can latch onto to try to generate excitement in a totally artificial, disingenuous way, but there's something there. And it's all about just identity. It's woman, not white, young, again, 59, but young by comparison. So we have to be realists about it. I'm seeing a lot of anti-realism on social media right now. For example, Kim Klacik tweeted yesterday that President Trump will garner a larger portion of the black vote than Harris will, which is just fantasy. Okay, it's wish casting. A Republican nominee hasn't even come close to that in generations. The idea that one will finally pull it off while running against a non-white female is just pure delusion. It's not going to happen. You have to understand and acknowledge that. Not because we want to be pessimistic or fatalistic, not because we're conceding defeat, obviously. All the smart money is still on Trump in this thing, don't get me wrong, but we have to be realistic about it because we have to employ an effective strategy that is grounded in reality. And there is no effective strategy except one that is grounded in reality. And that brings me to the second point, which is this, that Harris's whole campaign will be about diversity, right? Race and gender, diversity, equity, inclusion. I mean, it will be the DEI campaign. Also, abortion is going to be a big part of it, which falls into the gender category for them. And the Republican instinct, and I'm already seeing some of this, and this is what worries me, because the Republican instinct will be to pander even more to women and minorities in order to counteract all of that. Right? But that's the wrong move. That's a losing battle. That is a fool's errand. You are not going to out-pander a minority female Democrat politician. You're not going to do it. You cannot win that pandering battle. You just can't. It's not possible. And if you try, you'll be fighting the battle on her field, on her terms, the way that she wants. You'd be doing her a massive favor. You know, if Trump comes out and says, "No, I'm really the one who's who cares the most about black people and minorities. It's me," like that kind of thing. Trump comes out with that. Harris is sitting there like, "Thank God, this is the tack he's taking." She wouldn't be thanking God, but whoever she thanks. You can't win that way. So rather than pander, now does that mean that you come out and say, we don't need any votes from women and black people? No thanks. Obviously not. But no, you just don't pander. This is all the more reason to not do it. It's all the more reason to not run around like bragging about all the quote unquote black jobs you created while saying nothing about white jobs. Right? Like listing all the groups you're helping, but specifically not mentioning white people. That's what I mean by the pandering. Okay. And that kind of tactic, I don't think it's an effective tactic, even if you're running against Joe Biden, but against Kamala Harris especially isn't. So let her run the race and gender pandering campaign. She can have that. And Republicans should run a campaign that isn't about any of that. A campaign that's actually about Americans. But we're not breaking it down into groups. But you're just running for Americans who call this place their homeland, like J.D. Vance said in his speech at the convention. Make that your campaign. Which is, for the most part, essentially, of course, as we heard in Vance's campaign speech, like that's already a big part of the message, which is good. But I'm just worried about this what we know historically has been the Republican instinct to see this pandering game going on and thinking, well, two can play at that game. No, they can't. They can't. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.